towards Jesus. Peter was in the boat with 11 other men. Every single one had been personally called by Jesus. Every single one of them had witnessed his miracles. Every single one of them had heard all the same teachings that Peter had heard. Yet Peter was the only one that said, Master, if it's really you, call me and I'll come to you. Peter didn't say, Master, if it's you, wave your hand and come on in. He said, Master, if it's you, call me and I'm coming to you. The other 11 were too busy trimming sails and bailing water and dealing with the storm to even worry about getting out of the boat and going to Jesus. And every one of them had seen their fair share of storms. They were all called and asked to leave their families. Drop your jobs. Drop your families. Travel with me. The other disciples were not paying attention to the fact that the very one who had created the water was also the one that could calm it.
Amen.
You know, we find ourselves in that same situation. We forget sometimes that the very one who created our lives is the very one that can give us the calmness that we need to get through the storm. They had all been on a boat in a storm before. Remember, they were all on a boat. The storm comes up. Jesus is sleeping below, and they all run below. And they say, Jesus, come up, stop the wave, stop the storm. Sure enough, he walks up and he says, peace, be still. So, you know, it's not like they hadn't had this experience before. How many of us find ourselves going through a similar experience when we should have learned from our faith experience last time, yet we rely on ourselves the second time around? A little faith is better than no faith at all. Even Jesus reminded all of us that faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. I get really embarrassed and really ashamed when I realize that my faith sometimes doesn't even amount to the size of a mustard seed. And I'm a preacher. I'm supposed to have big faith, aren't I? That's what everybody keeps telling me. One very important thing to take away from this lesson of Peter and the boat is that it's not always the amount of faith that we have so much as using the amount of faith that we have. You know, I could have a closet full of gold right there, stacked from floor to ceiling, side to side, but if I don't open that door and take the gold nugget out, that gold isn't doing me a darn bit of good, is it?
Amen.
I can have a closet full of faith over there, stacked floor to ceiling, side to side, but if I don't open the door and take the size of a mustard seed out, that mountain's never going anywhere. It's not how much faith we have, my friends. It's using the faith that we have that's important. From one cover of the Bible to the other are stories after stories of our biblical heroes, our spiritual forebearers that had very little faith, but they knew how to use it when they were called upon. The last point I want to make this morning is probably the most important one, or at least it is for me. Old Peter steps up and he calls out, Master, if it's you, tell me to come to you. And then Peter did something amazing, especially for those of us who know the story of Peter. He waited. He waited on an answer. He waited on Jesus to say, come to me, before he got out of the boat. Anybody here this morning guilty of praying about something and then just going ahead and doing what you want to do anyway? God, I want you to do this for me. God, help me to do this. before we get the answer, we jump right out of that boat and we're going to walk on water, don't we? Well, I'm here to tell you, the people that you see doing that, they just know where the rocks are. They're not walking on the rocks. He asked a question, and then he did nothing in the middle of the storm that was raging all about him. He waited for an answer, and he got it. In one word, Jesus said, "Come." A real walk of faith sometimes is not having the faith to get out of the boat. It's about having the faith to call on Jesus and then sitting there in the middle of the storm waiting on him to answer you. Sometimes that's where our faith comes from. Sometimes waiting on God's answer is not the easiest thing to do. As a matter of fact, from my point of view, most of the time, that's the hardest thing. It's not asking Jesus for something. It's not praying to Jesus for something, believing that he will come through. It's waiting on his answer. And I've waited almost a year. And finally, this past week, I've gotten an answer. This has been the longest year of my life. I'll never forget Teresa walking in the church one day saying, "I just lost my job. I don't know what I'm going to do. How are we going to pay our bills? Cindy's not working. She's facing a major life-changing surgery. What am I going to do? I'm sending out resumes and I'm not getting any answers. What am I going to do?" You're going to wait. And you're going to take care of your partner that's having life-changing surgery. And then when that time is up, the Lord's going to provide for you. I remember Jim coming to me. He just had his heart broken. What am I going to do? I can't go on. You're going to wait. You're going to listen to the voice of God, and you're going to wait. Because at the right time, the Lord is going to bring the person that's supposed to be in your life into your life. And I've never seen him happier.
Amen.
Those are the only two people I think I can pick on this morning. Do we wait for God to answer us? God does not work on our timeline, but his timing is perfect. Don't ever forget that. His timing is perfect. God is the God of peace. And peace implies an aspect of patience. And patience implies an aspect of waiting. And waiting implies an aspect of confidence that our prayer and request was heard. Amen, Jim? Yeah. I think Paul gave us some wonderful words to cling to in faith as he wrote in 2 Corinthians 4. We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are not in despair. We are persecuted, but we are not abandoned. We are struck down, but we're not destroyed. Peter showed faith and obedience and patience